Welcome to Breathe In, Scream Out, a podcast for feeling it all, one breath and scream at a time. I'm Katie Healy, your guide through this sacred mess called life. Here in this podcast, we'll feel everything. We'll cry, we'll laugh, we'll scream, and maybe scream again. Let's get into it. Welcome back to Breathe In, Scream Out. I'm your host, Katie Healy. And I am so glad to be here with you today. Today's episode is all about Taurus season, the Taurus new moon, the Scorpio full moon. As always, before we get into the specifics and the big happenings that are coming up this season, not just with Taurus season, but also a big change we're going through collectively with Uranus. Same way we always start, what am I screaming about? Now, I record these a little bit in advance, closer to the season that we're in, so I can really be feeling into the energy. And I was going to come on here, since Taurus is all about being rooted in our bodies, it's our throat, it's our connection to our voice, that part of our body specifically. I was going to talk about, scream about, say the thing I was screaming about is, and this is going to knock some cool points, I think, off, because right now this is cool again. But I was going to talk about, scream about everybody smoking cigarettes again. I'm not into it. I hate it, actually. As someone who lost a parent to lung cancer, womp womp, not to be that person, but I am, and lost both of my grandfathers, actually, to different types of lung disease. I don't care if you think it looks cool. Stop smoking. And then I woke up and I saw the report from CNN about a website called the Rape Academy. You heard that right. I didn't stutter. Not making it up. It's not from some weird HBO show. It's real life, the Rape Academy, where men give tutorials how to sexually assault, rape their partners and wives. You drug them, and then you assault them, you rape them. And in the month of February alone, it had 62 million views. Now, if you're listening to this podcast and your first thought is, well, Katie, it's views, not users. Shut it off. Turn me off. Turn the dial down. Tap into your podcast with Joe Rogan, because this is not a space for you. Okay? We're not doing any devil's advocate. We're not doing any but not all men. 62 million views. There are also 7 planets in Aries right now. I'm angry. I'm rageful. I'm not surprised, which is probably the craziest part. I've been seeing content, absorbing it all morning, which is part of my fault. I go full cannonball into things like this. Not just this stuff. I fully cannonball into everything I do in my life. Relationships, projects, hobbies. But, so many people have been putting content out. That's why women chose the bear. That's why women choose the bear. Bears can't even go on the internet. And, I'm not one to be at a loss for words. And like I said, I'm not surprised. I'm disgusted. I'm disheartened. And I just want to be clear once and for all, since a lot of people, men and male-centered women, think that I hate men. I don't hate men. I don't hate anyone. A lot of men have done me dirty and wrong, and I don't hate them. Well, that's a lie. I hate, you know who I hate. I hate Donald Trump. There's a lot of people I do hate, but I don't hate the men in my life. I don't hate the men I come into contact with. I don't hate the men I've been in partnership with. Let's not forget, I am attracted to men. Unfortunately, I am heterosexual. It's the lamest thing about me. It's embarrassing. I don't hate men, but I hate a lot of their behaviors. I hate the way we, women and men, have been conditioned to center them. I say this all the time. Who raises men, generally? Who raises them? Women. So we could pick this apart forever, but I am screaming about all the ways men, and specifically white women, the 53% of white women who voted for Donald Trump, let me remind you, contribute to this issue that perpetuate Rape Academy. And it's so complex and intricate and, dare I say, nuanced in terms of the dynamics between men and women and how we got here and patriarchy in general and all the ways I myself contribute to it fully and completely. But 62 million views. Violence against women has always been made to be our issue, but actually I think it's even more of a men issue. And this is not a political podcast. Everything's political. But that is what I'm screaming about, because I just, as we know, especially women, we carry the DNA of our mothers, our grandmothers, the women before us, and all of that is bubbling up in my body right now, and yours too if you have seen it or heard about it, or maybe you've tuned me out because you just can't, you don't have the space for it, which I understand, and that's no longer acceptable for any of us, and we're going to talk about why. For any of us to be like, I just don't have the space, I can't even find the space. Find it. Make it. Because none of this is going to change unless we start getting really pissed off and fed up. 62 million views. 62 million. I just want to remind everyone the leading cause of death in women from ages roughly 18 to 45 is being murdered by a man. Primarily their partner, not just any man, their partner. And again, I want to remind everyone, I do love men. I fucking hate their behavior. And I hate the way we continue to act like it's okay. Okay, that's it. I promise my almost 8-minute rant about this is completed. But coming off of Aries season and leaning into Taurus season and listening to our bodies and being in relationship to the external world, and then the Scorpio full moon where we really come up against the inner world, the internal, our patterns, our shadows, those parts of ourselves we keep closed off, something to be aware of, right? If we're talking about being rooted in the body, then we can't shut ourselves down from any of the experience that the body has, any experience, any emotion, any feeling. So let's scream together, because I am fucking reeling today, ready to scream from a mountaintop. And if you can't scream or make sound, if you're in a public place or you just don't feel comfortable to, just some deep breaths, some sighs, and maybe some movement in your body. Wherever you are, seated, lying down, standing, find a way to come to center. If you can't close your eyes, just gaze down at the floor, leave them gently open and fix on a point in front of you. And if you can close your eyes, go ahead and close them. Whew. And whatever's going on in your body, bring your attention with your natural breath, your inhale and exhale, down into your feet, into your legs, into your seat. And I'll guide us through a few rounds of breath, but feel free to take all the time you need. Take a deep inhale through your nose. Big sigh out through your mouth. Another deep inhale through your nose. Big sigh out through your mouth. This final round of breath, that exhale will be a scream, a big sigh out into the open, into your hands, a flutter of your lips, whatever you need it to be. I'll be making sound into my hands, but you take what you need. Take your deepest breath in through your nose, yet hold it at the top. Let it build, let it rise, let it bubble up. Some sound out on that sigh or breath. Take what you need. Maybe shake the arms, the hands a little bit. Tap the feet. Take a breath in. Flutter your lips. Let it go. And wherever you are, if your eyes are closed, just come back, attention to your heart, your belly, your seat, your legs, your feet. Gently start to flutter your eyes back open. Come back into your space. And we will get into all things Taurus season. Taurus season starts April 19th. It goes through May 20th. We've got a Scorpio full moon on Friday, May 1st, a Taurus new moon on Sunday, May 16th. So again, we've swapped these energies and we have almost all of Taurus season to build up and be in the energy of Taurus. Taurus is the second sign of the zodiac. It's an earth sign, our first earth sign when we cycle through here. It's a fixed sign in the modalities. And the animal that represents Taurus is the bull. Scorpio is the 8th sign of the zodiac. It's water, also fixed. And traditionally, the animal or creature that represents Scorpio is scorpion. But in the embodiment of what Scorpio does and is, that transformational energy, it goes from scorpion to snake to phoenix. And we'll get into that a little bit more when we talk about that full moon. I mentioned that Taurus is all about the body and Taurus rules the throat. And just to get a little bit more granular and specific here, Taurus rules the ears, the neck, the throat, the vocal cords, the thyroid. When we think about, women hold and embody, unfortunately, the majority of autoimmune disease. And I've been seeing a lot of content lately about either be a bitch and say what you need or develop an autoimmune disease. And that's general but accurate. And Taurus is all about starting to, if Aries is I am and Aries is the head and thinking about I am and what I want, Taurus brings it down into the body and starts to use that desire that we experience, the I want, I am energy, take it into the body and start to express and come into contact with the external world, materialism, sensuality, nature. Scorpio rules the sacral chakra, so the pelvis, the reproductive organs, that entire part of our body, our connection to the sacral, which is creativity, pleasure, intimacy, trust in all relationships. And Scorpio is the sister sign, the sibling sign of Taurus, and it's where we go into the internal world. If Taurus is the external and what exists outside of us and how we create our relationship to the external, Scorpio is how we come into contact with and start to really dive into, build into our relationship with the internal world. And since Aries season is the start of the astrological calendar, the astrological new year, if Aries is the initiator, the fire starter, the big ideas, the vision, the truth of what we want to move towards, embody, how we want to take action, our desires, our anger, Taurus is grounding back down into earth. It's making contact with our body and being able to ground and listen to ourselves from a place of clarity and intention. If Aries is the fire starter, Taurus takes that fire, brings it down into us and decides, how can I actually move with this? How can I embody this energy? How can I be and come into contact with it? And Taurus is not just about the external world. It's our relationship, like I mentioned, to materialism, to sensuality. I often say, if you are a human being alive in 2026, you are meant to be in relationship with materialism, with earthly pleasures. And we've been also in Uranus in Taurus for the last 7 years. So collectively, Uranus is an outer planet that changes every 7 years. Collectively, we've all been coming into contact with materialism, with sensuality, with earthly pleasures, with excess, with rooted fixed, stubborn energy. We've all been moving through that energy for the last 7 years in Taurus, and we'll talk a little bit more about that when we talk about how Uranus is changing here later in Taurus season towards the end of April. Whenever you're listening to this, maybe it's already happened. But Taurus and Scorpio energy, both of those energies want us to be completely in the present moment, whether it's completely absorbed with what's happening externally or internally. They ask us to set aside our anxieties, our fears about the future, about what we need to make happen, about pain from the past, or anxiety about what's coming, and be fully in the here and now, to connect to our bodies, to connect to nature, to connect to pleasure, to connect to those parts of ourselves that we hide from, to those parts of ourselves we push away, and to really indulge and come into contact with it. If Taurus is aligned with spring, these fixed signs, Taurus, we are fully immersed in spring. There is no doubt about it, aside from global warming. Life is blossoming again. If you live in, depending on what part of the world you live in, you're experiencing a season in its fullness at the height of it. And the same with Scorpio energy. When we think about moving to Scorpio energy, October, November, we're fully in the fall. If Taurus is like a flower coming to life, blossoming again, coming into contact with feeling the sun, feeling the earth beneath us, then Scorpio is coming into contact with what lies underneath. And both signs allow us to align with the energy of external and internal. Taurus season is about being out in the world again. It's a really powerful and potent time to lean into slowing all the way down, coming into contact with pleasure, indulging in healthy ways, resting for the sake of rest, leaning into love and pleasure for the sake of our worthiness and being able to experience it. And if there was an overarching theme in terms of Taurus and Scorpio, especially this year, because there will be no planets in retrograde until May 6th, and it will be one of the outer planets. So everything is direct for the majority of the season. It's really about coming into coming into contact with our worth, our true sense of worth and inner knowing. That nothing from the external world or the internal world can shift our sense of worthiness and knowing just how much we do deserve. When we come into contact with the lower vibrations of Taurus, we're coming into contact with insecurity with the material world and thinking that external validation, having more, acquiring more materialistically, is that a word? Coming into contact with or acquiring more of the material aspects of life will make us feel more secure. We've all experienced a sense of, well, if I just have more money, more accolades, more possessions, more, then I will feel safe, then I will feel secure. And how many times have we seen people acquire more money, acquire more possessions, the bigger house, the bigger car, the more expensive surgery, the more expensive aesthetic. And that doesn't actually satiate that deep desire to feel safe, to feel secure, to feel deeply rooted in who they are and what they have. The lower vibration of Taurus is when we cling to comfort, when we resist change, when we are so stubborn that we miss what's happening, not just inside of us, but outside of us as well. When we are so rooted in the know-it-allness of that fixed Taurus energy, even when we know that there's something bigger for us, when there's something that we need to change in order to, or somewhere where we need to get uncomfortable in order to have that real sense of security or safety that we want. And we're not willing to do it because of how it looks externally. We all know that person, those people that experience all that validation through external security, and it never really fills the hole or the void. And the lower vibration of Scorpio, or the darker tones of Scorpio, would be rather than facing fears and wounds with the trust that transformation is part of life and transformation is how we step into more of what we want. We doubt our intuition, we shove down the feeling, we seek more of that external validation, we become overly preoccupied with money, status, and we avoid our true feelings. Simply put, we forget that everything that we want to validate our worthiness externally will only come from that internal validation. And we become jealous, manipulative, we become so deeply rooted in our patterns, we abandon our peace, our inner knowing, all to not lean into the fear of getting to really know ourselves deep down. And, both of the shadow sides of Taurus and Scorpio, at the end of the day, even though they're meant to be opposites or yin and yang, siblings, they deal with security, worth, fear. And what I think is really interesting about this for us collectively is we've been in that Taurus energy for 7 years. And on April 25th, Uranus, the planet of change, innovation, awakening, rebellion, is moving into Gemini for the first time since 1949. So if Uranus takes 7 years to change, it takes all that time to go through every sign in the zodiac, and we have not been Uranus and Gemini since 1941 to 1949. So in most of our lifetimes, except maybe our grandparents, some of our parents, we have not experienced this energy. And we will not experience Uranus and Taurus again. And there's an astrologer I love. She's an intuitive astrologer. Her name's Megan Rose. I've shared her stuff before. I share it often. I'll include her in the show notes. She's written some really potent content for me about Uranus and Taurus. And she talked about how Uranus in Taurus was, in the darker sense, we saw a lot of our timelines, if you're on social, or just the trends in the world, leaning back into everyone looking the same. The surgeries, the more, the excess, the crumble fucking cookies. Listen, if they're delicious, I get it. But this idea of like the influencer really popped off in the last 7 years. And like the shadow side of Taurus, I think, is so prevalent, and she talks about this, and I want to really credit her for how this shifted the way I was, or just opened me up to the power of Uranus in Taurus in the collective, or just Uranus transits for the collective in general. And she talked a lot about how everyone started dressing the same and looking the same and leaning into this aesthetic of clean girl this, dirty girl, just the collective taking on these trends. And that will always happen, right, in any transit. But specifically moving into Uranus and Gemini is when we'll embrace Gemini's mutability and Gemini's desire to change and connect and share and be more adaptable when it comes to the way we think, how we communicate, learn, share information. Uranus and Taurus was absolutely an invitation. We also saw, not in the shadow side, but in the lighter side, us becoming way more aware of what's happening with our bodies, especially as women. There's been a renaissance in women's health because nobody talks about it and there's no actual medical information, how understudied are women's issues. But we've seen in the last, if you think about it, the last decade, in particular the last 7 years, all the new information that's coming out about not just women's health, how we store trauma in the body, what it does to us, somatic healing, not just for me. In my life, I see it in all the ways it's transformed and changed my life, but how it's really become prevalent collectively. So if Taurus is about getting into the body and rules the throat and our voice and how we share information, we've also seen a renaissance in that, the way we've been encouraged to look at our resources, where they come from, who has the majority of them, our relationship to money. I don't know about you, but I've never been so open about talking about money and finances as I am now, especially as a woman. There's so many creators and authors and speakers and so much knowledge out there now about money and self-worth and, sharing what I make versus what you make and sharing the wealth in terms of like, this is what we're deserved. This is what we're owed. So it's not just the crumble cookie influencer, Kylie Jenner lip kit, darkness. Yes, I said darkness, but also that light side of being in our worth. And it's the duality of that, right? The rebellion of that. And Megan talked so beautifully and honestly about calling that shit out. And again, please go read what she shared, because she also shared about how Uranus and Gemini is going to help us embrace our inner freak. And she specifically referenced, we actually were in Uranus and Gemini last year for a little bit of time. And that's when she even referenced this, the Labubus came out and we were being encouraged to embrace our inner weirdo. So that's really what we're coming up into in this transformation, in this shift of Uranus, the planet of change, innovation, rebellion, that spark, moving into Gemini. And, the last time Uranus was in Gemini was a wartime, but it's when so much technology was, when you think about it, in terms of communication and how we share information was developed. And right now we're going through this renaissance of technology and AI, and that's going to keep happening. And we, as always, like anything, can resist it. We can ground down into that fixed energy and resist it, or we can learn how to, I don't want to say embrace it, but work with it and make sure that it works for us, not against us. So Uranus and Gemini is really inviting us to feel into the way we write, speak, share information, our story, how we put it out in the world. Think about the qualities of Gemini: air, mutable, embracing, being the student, embracing your inner weirdo. I know Gemini gets a bad rep. I won't stand for it as a Gemini rising. And I love my Gemini women and men. Behave yourselves, be better. And, it's time to actually say what we think instead of sugarcoating it, falling in line, being what is expected of us, or that Uranus and Taurus darker shade of that transit, of that cookie cutter. Everyone looks the same, acts the same, speaks the same, is saying the same thing, following the same trends. Gemini and Uranus wants us to go our own way. Gemini in Uranus wants us to stay open to being the student and also stay rooted in all the ways that Uranus and Taurus taught us about our self-worth and our resources and what we deserve and what we're owed. Uranus and Gemini wants us to take that knowing of worth and resources and just what we are owed in this human life, and then go out and share from our experience, to stay open to learning and processing and thinking and communicating, but do it in a way that's honest, to share ideas that feel different, not just because they're different, but because we know they can help us change and grow and shift how we think and view and see the world. And why is this important? Because it's happening right in the middle of Taurus season. It's going to be a big collective shift, and it's coming off of all this energy in Aries too. It's even more important to stay rooted in who we are, in what we know, in what we find worth in. And the Scorpio full moon happens before the Taurus new moon. So the Scorpio full moon on May 1st is the flower moon, and it is an invitation to open up to our depths of feeling. It reminds us, if Taurus season is all about the blooming of spring and the flowers, it reminds us of what is underneath, what it takes to blossom and grow, and that beauty that we see externally, that Taurus energy, all of the work and transformation and beauty and willingness to grow that happens from that Scorpio energy. It is the emphasis on how much the inner work matters before we can show up externally the way we want. Now, a lot of times people have to work out to in, and that's okay too. But this Scorpio full moon is a time for processing and transformation. And like I said, we correlate the Scorpio season to the scorpion, but it's actually scorpion, snake, phoenix. The stinger of the Scorpio moves into the shedding, the transformative nature of the snake, which can still bite you, but asks us to shed and transform so that we can rise again into that phoenix energy. It is an incredible, full, rich wave of emotion. It is an incredible, full, rich wave of what happens when we allow ourselves to transmute our emotions. And instead of turning away from our challenging, complicated feelings about ourselves and the world around us, to drop in, to tune in, to be with those feelings in a world that, and a season that maybe asks us to stay on the surface, to just overindulge and be in the earthly pleasures. This Scorpio full moon is a pocket of time to go even deeper, to embrace our feelings fully, to step out of the obsession with analysis and our analytical mind. And I say that as a Gemini rising with a lot of Gemini, Virgo, mutability, thought processing placements, and to really allow ourselves this pocket of time to just feel into our emotions without judgment, without criticism, without the conversation, without the need to understand it in the analytical mind. It brings us face to face with those parts of ourselves that we hide from, that we run away from, that feel uncomfortable. Because when we can tap into our discomfort, when we can look at the emotions that we find hard to express, those places where we continuously repress, spaces, relationships, those emotions that elicit strong reactions or even triggers in us, those places where we just want to hide, when we can actually be with those parts of ourselves, when we can actually sit in it and feel the fullness of it, that is when the transformation, that is where the transformation is possible. That is when it happens. And we say we want to fully love and accept ourselves, but so often we're not willing to sit with the parts of ourselves that we don't love, that we don't accept. And we sit on the surface of radical self-acceptance. We play at it. We pretend that we fully accept ourselves. And then an emotion or a feeling or a trigger or a moment comes up and we don't handle it the way we would have liked to, or we experience emotions that we still think are bad, are wrong, or we come into contact with a part of ourselves that is really hard to love, and we abandon it, and we criticize it, and we judge it, and we shame it. Me too. I am not free from those parts of myself at all. So we say we want to love and accept ourselves, but then we turn away from the parts of ourselves that we deem bad or wrong or unlovable. But when we can turn towards those parts, when we can sit with them and be with them, that is the real Scorpio power and energy, because then we sit with it, we see it, we hold it. Maybe we can't even change it in that moment. Maybe we can just be with it, and that is enough. That is the work. That is the transmutation. That is the power of the transformation of being in Scorpio. When we recognize that every pattern, every shadow part of ourselves, every belief, every aspect of ourselves that we've been made to believe is unlovable is actually capable of change. And even if it's not able to change in this very moment, just the seeing and the sitting and the being with it is where the power lies. Because once we create the awareness, then we have the ability to take steps, make choices to change it. So under a Scorpio full moon on Friday, May 1st, a whole Scorpio full moon weekend, what are the parts of yourself that you're hiding from? What are the parts of you that you still believe are bad or wrong or not good? What are the places where you still are really triggered and have strong emotional reactions and responses to? And this work is not to excuse those behaviors, but it's to understand them so that we can change them. And if you're someone like me who has often fought those parts of yourself, so heavily criticized and argued and judged those parts of ourselves, yourself, myself, then just being with them and creating a more accepting space for them to land is the work. It is enough. Getting out of your head sounds simple. When people are like, get out of your head, get into your body. It's not just getting in your body. It's sitting in those spaces. It's being with it when those challenging, sticky, tricky, icky feelings come up. And then making a different choice. Allowing yourself to share how you feel. Even if it comes up and you share with the person, I'm really struggling in this moment. What you did, whether you meant to or not, has triggered X, Y, or Z in me. And I just need to take a moment to process it, to be with it instead of pushing it away. All a Scorpio full moon wants us to do is really be with the feeling. And instead of projecting, reacting, shitting on ourselves or someone else, just sit with it, be with it, hold it so that we can allow it to transform. And when we allow ourselves on May 1st to be in that energy, then by the time we get to that Taurus new moon on May 16th, almost the end of Taurus season, we've done the inner work so we can really be in this rich energy of sensuality and materialism and really moving from a place of worth. Not just the good stuff we like about ourselves, but those shadow parts too. When we marry that together, when we bring that into unity and accept ourselves fully and see even those darker tones, those things we hide and run away from, when we accept them, not even love, just accept, and we see them as worthy, that even with these parts, we are still worthy and whole. That's when we can fully embrace, embody, be in the fully realized energy of Taurus. And like I shared, Taurus is the first earth sign. It is deeply rooted and held. If you know a Taurus, they have this steady confidence and self-belief that is so admirable and we all can learn from. They're stubborn. They're that fixed bull energy. So a Taurus new moon is after a season of Uranus and Gemini, that big collective change, and then that deep dive into Scorpio. It's a moon to slow down, to be in our body so that we can connect to all the parts of pleasure, our senses, our touch, our smell, our taste. It's remembering that we have everything we need, that we have more than enough. And sometimes that saying or that thought pisses me off in a world that there is such disparity in terms of resources and wealth and being made to feel like we're not worthy. When, such a small percent of the population, majority white men, hoard the wealth, I would be ignorant to sit here from a place of privilege too, to say you have everything you need when so many of us are dealing with insecurity, housing insecurity, food insecurity, and instability, not knowing where our next paycheck will come from. Even when we're making on paper good money, prices of everything keep going up and we just feel strapped. I do not want to glaze over those feelings because I certainly feel that way too. Like we're just trying to survive. So, in that knowing and in that understanding, still, where can we find the gratitude? And if that pisses you off, I get it. Still, how can we find the gratitude for outside of the systems that oppress us, because there are many that we can find gratitude in what we do have, what we do have access to, the relationships in our lives. More than ever, collectively, our greatest resource, our biggest source of abundance is each other. So leaning into what you have in your life in terms of your relationships, in terms of some days for me, it's really simple. The gratitude list. I am grateful for a roof over my head that I love, that I can afford to keep this home, to stock my fridge with nourishing foods that make me feel good in my body, that make me feel supported and nourished, that I have people who love and support and protect me. I'm talking like it sounds silly sometimes, or maybe there's days where it doesn't seem like enough, but if we can continuously every day, especially on the days when it's hard in this world that seeks to continuously take from us, to root into what you know you have, to root into who you are as a person. It's taking this wisdom of worth, of resources, of nature, of connection. It's gathering it all and trusting our value and security and abundance from that space, from the simplest place possible. If the darker tones of Taurus are excess and sensuality and pleasure and excess in terms of food and sex and possession, how do we bring that into balance with I have more than enough? That abundance is not just the number in my bank account, even though we've all been made to believe that. How do you spend Taurus season and this new moon fighting what the systems have taught us about abundance? That abundance actually is how you feel in your life, the relationships you have, the security that you have. It's not about more money, more possession, more excess. It's our relationship to our bodies, to our voice, that we can, depending on where you live in the world, whether it's in your community or in your relationships, express how we feel, stand up for what's right, be in our body, speak up for what we need. And this new moon is, in a way, just like the Taurus season of spring, planting the seeds for the lasting structures and rootedness that we want to have in our life. So if Aries was that vision, that fire, that starting, that new beginning, Taurus asks us to root down, to focus on what we do have, to focus on who we are, and build that vision of Aries season from that place, to deeply understand just how worthy we are of our dreams, of our vision, of what we want, even especially in a world that tells us we are not enough. Trusting that the key to creating the life that we want and our dreams and our vision, not just the awards, not just the number in the bank account, how you want to feel in your life. I know I've mentioned this many times before, but Taurus and Scorpio are about the feeling body, the being in the body, the relationship that our body has to the internal and the external. So how do you want to feel in your life? Creating your vision and your dream life, yes, of course. It's good to have those benchmarks and those accolades. And if you're someone that's driven by those things, I have so many Capricorn placements. I'm constantly thinking about achievement, right? But how is that going to make you feel? Is that achievement really going to give you the feeling of what you want? Do you want the number in the bank account, or do you want safety and security? And if it's safety and security, is it about the number, or is it about the life you build for yourself around it? How do we, this Taurus season and this Taurus new moon, separate ourselves from the structures outside of us that we did not create, but maybe that we've bought into, and set a new system of beliefs, set a new system of structures, set a new relationship to who we are and what we're worth, so that we build from that place, so that no one, no system, no thing, no imbalance of power can come and make us believe that we are not worthy of what we want and who we are. And a Taurus new moon practice, or a few that could be really potent and powerful, is gratitude every day. I do this practice inspired by Gala Darling. She's an EFT, emotional freedom technique tapping expert. She is someone I love to follow, and I've done a lot of her courses and her work. If you're into EFT or have never tried EFT, please look her up. I'll include her in the show notes as well. But something I do or try to do every day, it's called a magical morning practice that she created. At least 2 minutes of gratitude, what you are currently so grateful for. I am grateful for a roof over my head that I love, food in my fridge that is healthy and nutritious. I am grateful for the relationships in my life. I am grateful for a job I like with people I love, whatever. Anything you're currently grateful for at least 2 minutes. Then another 2 minutes of I am so happy. And you talk about how your day went before it even happened. I am so happy that that meeting went even better than I could have ever expected. I am so happy that I had such a nourishing lunch with one of my favorite people in the world. I am so happy that I was able to come home and take time to ground and root into myself. Visualizing the day, speaking it into existence before the day happens. At least 2 minutes of that. And then another at least 2 minutes of I am so glad. Now, I am so glad is the longer term vision. I am so glad that I get to wake up every day in a home that I love, in the city that I love, next to the person that I love. I am so glad that I get to live a life beyond my wildest dreams, doing X, Y, and Z. And that's almost like the 6-month, 1 year, 5 year, 10-year plan. And you talk it out. I do it in a voice note, and she encourages folks to share it, say the words. Words are our spells. And if Taurus rules the throat, what a better way to speak your life, your dreams, your vision into existence. That is a really powerful Taurus new moon practice. And you could do it once on the Taurus new moon. You could speak it out. You can write it out. You can do it every day like I try to. And the idea is that you're speaking your dreams, your vision into experience, into existence. And as you say these things or write these things, use the Taurus energy of really feeling it in your body. Let it rise up naturally. Sit with it. Go out into nature. Be with nature. Allow yourself to speak what you desire most into existence. Uranus moving into Gemini, new moon and Taurus aside, Uranus moving into Gemini, the way we communicate, share, how we also speak it into existence. Gemini rules the lungs. We breathe it into life. And as you're sitting with this Taurus new moon, really asking yourself, not just what you want. Sometimes that's hard to tap into, right? If you're feeling stuck, like I have these last few months, and you feel a little lost and you can't or don't have the vision right now, maybe it's more about asking yourself about those places in you where you've been quietly or not so quietly holding yourself back. What's that thing, that dream, that vision you've always wanted to do, but you're not sure you deserve it? Where are you still telling yourself the story that you are not worthy of having the career, the relationship, that amount of money, that house, that life that you so deeply desire? And what would happen today if you decided you no longer bought into that belief? That you no longer operated from that place of not feeling worthy, not feeling safe, not feeling secure? What would your life look like? How would you move through the world? Who would you be? And then building the vision from that place. And any Taurus, Scorpio season access, any Taurus, new moon, Scorpio, full moon, or vice versa, is an opportunity to be in the body, to let the feelings arise, not just from the external, again, from the internal. And speaking your life, your vision into existence from your body knowing, your inner knowing. So often we're made to believe that, like I've been saying this entire episode, that we need more externally in order to feel valid and safe and secure. That we need all the gadgets and gizmos and vagus nerve regulators and supplements and class pass experiences to make our nervous systems feel regulated, to be more in our body. If you want to live in your heart, you need to be in your body. If you want to be in your body, you need to be with your breath. We have all of the tools that we need. We've just been deconditioned or meant to disconnect from those parts of ourselves. We've been conditioned to buy into the things we need outside of ourselves. And we've gotten so far away from the power that speaking our truth, making space for all of our feelings, coming into contact with those parts of ourselves we don't like, using our breath, shaking our body, using our body to tap into what we want. And it's not lost on me that not all of our bodies feel like the safest place to be. It is not as simple to say you're safe in your body to anyone when so many of us, our bodies have been used against us, have been used as a weapon, as a way to make us feel not worthy. I feel that one big time, as a way to make us believe that we do not have or are not enough. But what happens when we allow ourselves to really be with everything happening to and within our bodies, internally and externally? What happens when we just allow ourselves to sit in the feelings and then to create our dream life, our visions from that place? We have to understand what's happening internally. We have to come into contact with those parts of ourselves in order to speak that life, that vision into existence externally. So this Taurus season, really allowing ourselves not just to work from the outside in, but from the inside out. And I'm so happy we have the Scorpio full moon first, so we can actually experience that journey to get into contact with what's going on underneath the surface, so then we can create from that place and create our external world from that place. And to really come in contact with, no matter the feeling, no matter the story, no matter the belief or conditioning, we have the opportunity to make a different choice, to no longer buy into the bullshit, the pain, the narrative that has been projected onto us. And that's not to minimize those feelings, right? The Scorpio full moon, we feel them fully. And then we make a different choice. We choose to see our worth. We choose to see the beauty. We choose to see the goodness and the pleasure and the joy that can exist even with all of that excess and shadow and discomfort. I hope you have a beautiful Taurus season. This episode is coming out pretty early in Taurus season. Take what you need, leave the rest. Thank you, as always, for listening. I'll include everything I mentioned in the show notes about the astrologers and the folks that I mentioned in this episode. If you have any questions, thoughts, feelings, gripes, likes, dislikes, let me know. Thank you for listening. I can't wait to breathe in and scream out with you again soon.